Hi everyone and welcome to my channel. My name is Noam and today I want to talk about a cool scale named the octatonic scale. I'll start by playing the scale on my flute so you can hear what it sounds like before we discuss the theory. I'll just add some reverb here. This is what it sounds like going up and going down. Now I'll just improvise a bit. That's a pretty cool sound. Maybe it reminds you of jazz improvisation, or maybe Stravinsky piece, or maybe the Back to the Future soundtrack. Those are actually all examples of music that uses this scale quite a bit. Let's try and break it down. The octatonic scale is created using a series of alternating whole and half step intervals, meaning we go up a whole step, then a half step, another whole step, another half step, and so on and so forth. So for instance, I can start with C, go up a whole step to D, a half step to E flat, a whole step to F, etc. Excuse my keyboard skills. I'm a much better flute player than a keyboard player. Anyway, if we do that for the whole octave, we get C, D, E flat, F, G flat, A flat, A, B, and then back to C. So you might have noticed that we have one more note here than what we usually have in our scales, right? If I go C, D, E, F, G, A, B, I have 7 different notes before I get back to C. But here we have 8. That is why it's called an octatonic scale, because octa is like 8. Like an octagon is a shape with 8 sides, an octopus has 8 legs, so octatonic just means 8 tones. So what's the deal with this octatonic scale? Well, the deal with any scale is what you do with it. As you heard in my little flute example, this scale has a kind of outlandish and mysterious quality to its sound, I'd say. So that's the first thing the octatonic scale would be useful for. Creating melodies with a mysterious, suspenseful, unusual vibe. That's actually the main way I see the scale and use it. But that's just scratching the surface. Since the scale is created in this unusual whole tone, half tone sequence, it's totally symmetrical. If I start with the C, or I start with E flat, or if I start in any note that's a minor third away, I always get the same exact 8 notes. This actually causes the scale to be a bit confusing in terms of its tonal center. In a regular scale, like E minor, the E feels like the center, the home base, right? If I play we go out from the home E and go back to it. But the octatonic never gives us this feeling of a home because of its symmetrical shape. I can go on and not feel a clear resolution. Is this home? Is this home? Is this home? So this is part of what makes the scale sound so mysterious and unusual. There's a lot more to say about this scale, but I wanted to keep the video short and also give another example, which will hopefully give you some inspiration to try and use the scale in your music. Okay, so I've prepared a very short, spooky, haunted sounding piece. It sounds like this. Okay, so right now the piece starts pretty abruptly. So let's say I'd like to add an energetic little phrase that'll propel us into this spookiness. This is where the octatonic scale could be very useful in my opinion. I can make a little strings run using the octatonic scale and ending on the tonic of this piece, which in our case is E minor. So I want the run to be 1 bar long, and I'm thinking it'll be in 16th notes. So sound like Now I can use the scale symmetry here to make things easier for me. Let's go back to the piano for a minute. If I cut the scale into 4 parts, I get one that starts on E, one on G, one on A sharp, and one on C sharp. So all I need is to put 4 notes around each one of these, and I'll have a nice little pattern. I could do this, which repeated would sound like this. Not bad. I could start by going down and then up like this. I like that. So I'll create a new part here in the violin track. And I'll use step input here in Cubase, which can be toggled up here. And I'll create a little sequential run. Sequential is just a fancy word for a repeating musical pattern. Let's see what that sounds like in solo. Sounds great. Okay, so now I want to make this a little fuller. So I'll add a second voice, a minor third under this first voice, which again will sit perfectly inside the octatonic scale because of the way it's built. Great. Maybe just one more thing. I'll add a cymbal. Here. Let's hear the whole thing now. Okay, so that was one example of using the octatonic scale in an orchestral composition. One very important thing that I failed to mention before is that this scale can be constructed the other way around. First a half step, then a whole step, then half, then whole, etc., etc. That would sound like this. So we get a similar but slightly different sounding scale. As I said, this is just scratching the surface. I strongly encourage you to play around with the scale. For instance, try and see what kind of chords can be created from within the scale. There are a whole bunch of chords of all kinds hiding in there. Or you can try and use it as a pivot to get to a different tonality. That means to go from C minor, for instance, to F sharp minor, which is quite far away. The octatonic scale is great for those kind of things because it doesn't have a clear tonal center, so it could be interpreted in many different ways. So to summarize, the octatonic or 8-tone or diminished scale has a very special sound and some interesting and useful characteristics, such as being symmetrical and not having an obvious tonal center. I love this special sound, and I hope you've gotten inspired to try and use it in your own music. That's it for today, and see you in the next one.